Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you very much for watching. I think we're right on time, so I'm going to go ahead and start. Very excited about the quarterly investor call. A lot to go through, so I'm going to go through it bit by bit. I'm going to start with the summary from the slide deck. If you go to Tesla Investor Relations, I'm going to grow some hair with that reaction. If you go to the Tesla slide deck on Tesla Investor Relations website, there's a slide deck, and before the investor call, I went and I took a lot of hello everyone. I took a lot of screenshots or shots, images from different parts of the investor call just to see, what was really interesting. So right here is the summary from that slide deck. And I thought one thing that stood out to me in this, there's a whole bunch of information. Revenue's up. I think it's record revenue. Great margins, great cash flow. A lot of the fundamentals of the business look good. There's sort of what are the quarterly numbers? And mostly I think the quarterly numbers are unimportant because I'm interested in the long term of the company. I'm interested in the long-term prospects. Where is Tesla going? So there are little bits here and there from the quarterly that matter, but I'm much more concerned about the long-term issues. So what struck me in the summary there, and again, you can go to Tesla Investor Relations webpage, and this is on the slide deck. The slide deck is on the Q3 thing. Operating margins are up, they're great, but in the third paragraph there, I underlined this line: more ambitious architectural changes to our products and factories. We are implementing more ambitious architectural changes to our products and factories to improve manufacturing cost and efficiency. This is critical to Tesla's long-term business prospects. If they can make their manufacturing more efficient, if they can get costs lower, then they can sell products for less money and still make a profit, or they can sell products for the same money and make more profit. It enables Tesla to scale, to grow, to achieve the goal that Elon talked about late in the call. Look, the goal is to replace the global fleet of internal combustion engine vehicles. And they talked about 2030. I forget who his name was. It'll come up later when I go through my notes. One of the analysts asked Elon about the goal of achieving 3 terawatt hours or however many terawatt hours and how that would translate to 20 million vehicles in 2030. And I don't, after you listen to Elon, that doesn't sound that ambitious. The goal is to replace the global fleet of 2 billion vehicles. And if Tesla is only producing 20 million vehicles, sorry, this is just bothering me. If Tesla is only producing 20 million vehicles in 2030, which is the goal Elon's talking about, that's just 1% of the global fleet being replaced. So Tesla is going to need to produce more than 20 million vehicles a year, or other companies have to step up. So I thought that was really important. There's another reference at the bottom of that paragraph I didn't underline about our new 4680 cells are an important step forward to reduce cost and improve capital efficiency while improving performance. I'm going to talk about that later. So, and I'm going to do a Q&A at the end. If you're commenting in the chat, I'm going to really focus on what I prepared, and then I'm going to look at questions afterwards, and we'll have a conversation afterwards. So the next thing was the highlights. And the thing that stood out to me in the highlights was the reference to the build out of 3 new factories on 3 continents continuing as planned. Tesla's trying to scale. And I'm going to talk, I've got a video I'm working on that I'm probably going to publish on Saturday. I haven't started videoing yet, but I'm working on this video. And there's this question I keep getting in my videos and so on. The question I keep getting is, how can Tesla possibly grow that much, from 500,000 vehicles in 2019 or 500,000 vehicles in 2020 to what I talked about in my 2022 video? And the answer is, well, in 2020, Tesla had 1.5 factories operating in an impaired manner. Shanghai was still scaling. Both factories were impaired by the COVID outbreak. So yeah, Tesla's going to produce about 500,000 vehicles in 2020. I think I'll talk about that maybe later, why I think it's going to be more than 500,000 vehicles, and I'll get to that. But you're going from 1.5 impaired factories in 2020 to 4 factories going full bore in 2022. That's why 2022 is going to be big. And then the question is, where does it go from there? Just really quick, Lang Kanai, why would Tesla need to be pumping out 20 million a year if autonomy is up? Each vehicle replaces 5 cars. If you assume that each robotaxi replaces 5 cars, then 100 million vehicles is still only barely making a dent in the global fleet of 2 billion. How can Tesla grow that much? By replacing a lot of ICE car factories? Well, I don't think it's about replacing ICE car factories. It's about making more cars, and if you have more factories, you can make more cars. And if your factories are more efficient, you can make more cars. And if your manufacturing process is more efficient, then you can make more cars. And if you produce more batteries, then you have more batteries to make more cars. So to me, it's really all about the batteries. If they already have manufacturing down pretty good, they're getting better, but it's all about the batteries. If they can make more batteries, they can get there. So, an FSD rollout started just yesterday. I think we're making progress there, but I think that really wasn't a big part of the call. So let's see what's next. Financial summary. What did I know? I'm gonna block my own face for this at least a little bit, so I can read it. So the vehicle average, this is a minor detail in my opinion, the vehicle average selling price declined slightly. What happens is Tesla used to be a company that had a lot of Model S's and Model X's, and they were just starting to make the Model 3 and the Model Y. And Model S and Model X cost more than the Model 3 and the Model Y. So as Tesla increases the scale of Model 3 and Model Y, they become a larger proportion of the sales compared to Model S and Model X. So you might see that. You could see somebody criticizing Tesla saying, oh, the average selling price is going down. That's to be expected. The Model 3 and the Model Y are going to be bigger volume products, and they're going to have lower sales price than the S and X. So the average selling price has to go down. There was a reference. It's funny. I called this on Twitter like an hour or two before the investor call, that before the slide deck was released, that I expected that Tesla was going to announce some kind of one-off expense that was going to lower their net profit. And they did. It was the accounting for Elon's tranche, his options that were awarded. That was a hit to the company's net earnings. It doesn't affect operations, but Elon got a chunk of shares, and they have to account for that. And then the third thing was the quarter-end cash equivalents increased to $14.5. Tesla has a cash pile of $14.5 billion. They have a huge pile of cash. It's not clear what they're going to do with this huge pile of cash. The cash has to go into outfitting the factories that they're building. It's a big cash pile. I think something may be coming. There was rumors. If you followed the news this week, there were rumors about a Terra factory in Nigeria. Not Nigeria, in Indonesia. I got Nigeria on the brain for other reasons. Tesla is in talks with Indonesia about making batteries using nickel from Indonesia, or some kind of deal with Indonesia, because that's the biggest nickel producing country in the world. Indonesia, if you don't know, is the 4th largest population in the world and the 16th largest economy. I covered it in a video about 2 or 3 weeks ago when I talked about where the next gigafactory might be. So, and free cash flow of 1.4 billion, cash is flowing in. It's not just the capital raise that they did. There's cash flowing in. Okay. So the next thing was the operations. So one thing that stood out to me, this is probably one of the biggest things I saw in the slide deck that I thought was huge importance, was solar and storage both grew at very high rates. This is a big question that I've had. If Tesla's going to produce 100 gigawatt hours of high nickel batteries in 2022, and if they're going to get ballpark 100 gigawatt hours of batteries from suppliers in 2022, then how do those batteries get distributed? I just did a video, and I'm working on another video about this idea I have that we should look at revenues per gigawatt hour. Look at how many gigawatt hours of batteries Tesla produces and buys from suppliers, and how they distribute that. I'm going to hide this. How they distribute that across vehicles and batteries, and what that leads to in terms of product mix, how many solar panels, how much revenue that generates. And so I think this is hugely important, how they're going to do that, and that was a big part of the conversation. All right, what do we got next? Did I do this already? I did this. Oh, right, I did this. So one of the issues is, in order for Tesla, people complain by saying Tesla. That's how Elon says it. I'm sorry, I needed to say one thing first. Let me introduce. Before I go further, I want to thank Bradford Ferguson of Halter Ferguson Financial and my other supporters on Patreon. And you can see my Patreon here. And it should be in the description below. I want to thank them for their support. This is helping me improve my production. And of course, what I'm saying in this video is not financial advice. It's my opinion, and I would encourage you to do your own research. Okay, so I wanted to get that out of the way. Let me get that out of the way completely now. So, solar, we saw 57 megawatt hours of solar deployed, which is more than double the previous quarter. We saw 759 megawatt hours of, or megawatts, 57 megawatts of solar and 759 megawatt hours of storage deployed. These are big jumps from previous numbers. And this is critical because if Tesla's going to have all these batteries, they got to put them somewhere. And it's great if they put them all in the vehicles, because I think on average vehicles generate more revenue and profit for Tesla than, say, Megapack. My numbers say Megapack is about $300 per kilowatt hour in revenue, where vehicles are more like $700 per kilowatt hour. So Tesla is actually going to make more money or generate more revenue by making vehicles and selling vehicles than it is by doing Megapack. Powerwall is a little different because a Powerwall goes with solar. Solar generates a lot of revenue. But the idea is to be balanced, so they need to really scale up solar and batteries and grid storage, because those are very, very small parts of the business right now. All right. So going forward and I'm looking out to 2022. And one of the questions, because I'm projecting a fairly large number of vehicles produced in 2022, considering we're looking at 500,000 this year, and maybe we're looking at a million in 2021. So I think this capacity chart here that I just put up gives you some sense of how many vehicles Tesla, this is current capacity. This is how much the factories can produce of these vehicles. So you add that up, it's 590,000 plus 250,000. That's, I think, 840,000. I don't know if I got the number. I think that's 840,000 vehicles that they're capable of producing in those two factories. So in the fourth quarter, that means Tesla should be able to produce 210,000. I got 200,000 on my image here, but I got 200,000 on my image here, 207,000. I think it's actually 210,000. So I believe to achieve the 500,000 goal, I forget the number. There was a sort of goal that Tesla has of making 500,000 vehicles in 2020, and that was pre-COVID. So obviously COVID coming in and getting in the way, people thought the 500,000 this year goal was out of reach. But if they produce 210,000 vehicles in 2020, that's huge. I think that clearly gets them over the 500,000 number. So thank you, Alan. So the other interesting thing on this chart, if you look down at the bottom corner there, I put some question marks. Sorry. We can see Fremont, Shanghai, Berlin, Texas, and then United States. It's not specified. Somebody else noticed this on Twitter, and I hadn't noticed it. They didn't specify where Semi and Roadster were going to be built. Now, I thought they had said before that Roadster was going to be built in Fremont and Semi was going to be built in Austin. They haven't said. And the other thing that's interesting is the Model Y factory in Shanghai, we know is under construction. I think that's almost done. The Berlin Model Y factory is under construction. They're making great progress. The Model Y factory in Texas is apparently under construction, although the photo in the slide deck is like a bare field, dirt field. So I'm not sure how much progress they've made on the Model Y factory in Texas, but they're expecting that to go quickly. And then Cybertruck and Semi, I'm not too worried. I don't really talk much about Roadster because I think Roadster's a footnote. It's a fun car, it's very exciting, and it's a halo car, but it has little significance to Tesla's long-term revenue and profit. It's a fun car. But Cybertruck is huge, and Semi is pretty significant in terms of the number of batteries it's going to use. Something Elon said in the call today, I'm wondering if they figured out some way to make Semi work with less batteries, and I don't think it's possible. But he said that Semi uses 4 or 5 times as many cells as a regular car. Well, a regular car, maybe, Model Y model, ballpark is 80 kilowatt hours, 100 kilowatt hours for the Model S and the Model X. 4 times that or 5 times that would be, 500 kilowatt hours. I didn't think that would be enough. I thought they were talking about a megawatt hour for the 500-mile range Semi. So that was an interesting little tidbit there as well. All right, let's see. I don't think there was anything more here. They talked about Fremont. They're increasing capacity. The capacity of Fremont is increased for Model 3 and Model Y to 500,000 units a year. That's great news. They've increased. Shanghai is doing better thanks to low-cost batteries. And this is another detail that came up. I think it was in the investor call. I think it was in the slide deck. I'm going to come to that. I'll do it right now. The lower cost batteries and an increased level of local procurement. I'll come to it later. And then, no, let me just do it now. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to pop this up. I thought this was a really important bit about the cathode material. This is in the slide deck. We're taking if you remember before, there was this slide, the diversified cathode approach, and it showed some vehicles with iron and some vehicles with nickel manganese and some vehicles with high nickel. And there was this question, is it only the high nickel batteries that are using the 4680 cell cylinder, the 46 millimeter diameter, 80 millimeter high, the fat cylinder that's about the size of a human thumb? And, or maybe it's big. I think somebody said it was the size of a small Coke can. That the 2170 is the size of a thumb, and I don't think it's this big. But so this was really stunning, though, that all of the cathodes will work with the 4680 cells. This is something I've been saying, and people were questioning me in comments, and maybe in the chat, maybe in the comments on the YouTube videos, maybe on Twitter. And I was saying this in the beginning, Tesla is I think they're trying to standardize on this 4680 cell format because that's going to help with structural battery pack. It's going to help with a lot of other things. So I'm going to take that back off and we're going to go back to vehicle capacity. I did the chart, text. So Berlin, I thought this was interesting that equipment is going to they're going to start moving. This is the bottom here. Yeah, right here at the bottom. At Berlin, they're expecting to start moving equipment into the factory over the coming weeks. This is October. They're going to be They're going to be producing at Berlin soon. I'm not saying January, but I wouldn't be surprised if Berlin is producing Model Ys before June. June, July, something like that. I think we're going to start seeing Berlin producing vehicles a lot quicker than people expect. So, all right, what do we got next? Another important thing from the slide deck. Sorry, I'm all itchy. Sorry. Another important thing from the slide deck, and this is for long-term. This is a short-term thing in terms of what we're seeing, but this is really important for Tesla's long-term success. The percentage of locally made vehicles being delivered. If you're making all your vehicles in Fremont, California, and you have to ship them to China and you have to ship them to Europe, then it takes a long time to get them there. It costs a lot more to get your vehicles to the customers. And they've increased the percentage of vehicles that are delivered from locally made things. And that's a big chunk of that is just they're making vehicles in Shanghai and they're selling them in Shanghai. They're making vehicles in Fremont and they're selling them. I think this was a reference to the same continent, or maybe the same country. They're not making vehicles in Europe yet. So once Berlin is up and running, this is going to go really high. And this is really important for long term because it lowers Tesla's operating costs and it increases customer satisfaction because you're able to deliver the vehicles to the customer quicker at lower cost, and the customer is happy because they get the vehicle quicker. And Tesla is happy because they get their check for the vehicle closer in time to when they spent the money to produce the vehicle. And this is critical for Tesla's long-term viability. I think Tesla's already there, but it just helps. It makes things better. Okay, what do we got? Energy business. This was big. This was really big. I mentioned before in another slide deck thing, energy storage business reached record deployments of 759 megawatt hours in Q3. And here's the deal. This is one of my questions. How are they going to use the cells that are going to be created, shifting them from just vehicles? Because grid storage is a very, very small part of Tesla's business right now. It's a very important part of the business as it grows, but it hasn't been growing that much. And now we've seen a big jump. And he said Megapack production continued to ramp at Nevada as production volumes more than doubled in Q3. And they're seeing accelerating interest in Powerwall as concerns with grid stability grow. For those who are not in America and maybe even not in California, California's had a lot of grid reliability issues. And if you followed I did a live stream on Sunday, my power went out briefly. So there's a real interest among a lot of people in having a reliable electricity in America. This didn't used to be, it's so strange. I didn't think this was an American problem. I thought this was a third world problem, but we're seeing grid reliability issues in California, which is the largest economy in the United States and would probably be one of the largest economies in the world if it was its own country. So, California is becoming like a third world country in some ways. So accelerating people, I want a Powerwall. People want Powerwall. As they scale, they're probably going to be able to reduce the cost as they shift to lithium iron phosphate from nickel-based chemistries, which is a question I didn't get answered. I had a question in there. I wanted to see, do they intend to make Powerwall with lithium iron phosphate eventually? And I can't imagine they don't. That should be lithium iron phosphate, and lithium iron phosphate batteries are less expensive. But even if they just ramp their own, they improve their own battery manufacturing, and they said in the question and answer that all products will eventually shift to the 4680 format. So cost is going to go down and pricing is going to go down for these products. So, sorry. So they also recently demonstrated one of the challenges with solar, and particularly with Solar Roof, one of Elon's big goals is to get Solar Roof ramped. Tesla makes Solar Roof at their Buffalo Gigafactory, and the idea is Americans replace some huge number of roofs a year. In other countries, people replace huge number of roofs. And if you can get them to replace their roof with Solar Roof instead of regular roof, and the cost isn't much different from putting a new roof on, and you get these benefits as a consumer of, you get all this, basically free electricity, then it's a huge volume. The volume potential for Solar Roof is stunning. And Elon made a comment. I gotta find this. Elon made some comment. I don't know if I can find it. I'll probably hit it later. He said something about Solar Roof is going to blow people away next year. And I'll find it later. I'll find it as I go through my notes later on in this video. So, but 1.5 day Solar Roof install. One of the challenges with Solar Roof is getting it installed in a reasonable time. That's been a challenge. They're working on it. They discussed it in the Q&A. They are making progress and getting the Solar Roof installed quicker, and that's going to be huge. In the slide deck, they said they did a 1.5 day Solar Roof install, but in the quarterly Q&A, somebody, forget the guy's name, one of the guys said they did one in a day. I'm going to find it when I go through. I don't know where, it's in my notes somewhere. I'll find it when I go through. So, let's see what else we got. This is the outlook. We should have sufficient liquidity to fund our product roadmap, long-term capacity expansion plans, and other expenses. So we know about the short-term expansion plans. The short-term expansion plans are Austin, Berlin, and continuing to grow Shanghai. This is a reference to long-term capacity expansions. This tells us that Tesla has plans for more factories. Terafactories for batteries and gigafactories for products. We don't know where yet. Yeah, it was RJ. That's right. I remember that. So we're going to see a big scaling of Tesla, and they've got $14 billion in cash. So if Tesla decides we want to build a factory somewhere, it becomes a lot easier. There was in the news, Indonesia, they're talking about, securing some kind of deal with nickel and building a Terra factory in Indonesia. That's going to be huge. So that little bit, if you are a short-term quarterly report focused investor, then you don't care about this. But if you're like me and you're a long-term investor, this is like monster news. This is monster news. They are disclosing that they have long-term capacity expansion. It doesn't surprise me. I think we all knew they're planning to grow more, but now it's long-term capacity expansion plans. There's something bigger going on here. We're currently building water-wide capacity at Gigafactory Shanghai, Gigafactory Berlin, and Gigafactory Texas, and remain on track to start deliveries from each location in 2021. Tesla semi-deliveries will also begin in 2021. We continue to significantly invest in our product roadmap. And in the Q&A, Elon said he expects to also deliver Cybertruck in 2021. So 2021 is going to be a big year. I'm more interested in 2022 and beyond. I think 2021 is still kind of short term, but getting the ducks in a row in 2021 sets the stage for 2022. Jim, I don't think roof tiles really have insulation value typically. I think it's what's under the roof tile that matters for insulation. There's a big question about where semi is going to be built. A couple people are saying Tulsa. I don't think it's going to be Tulsa, but hey, you never know. Okay, so we talked about the cathode. Let's see, I think that's it. So that's it for my slides. So let me go through my notes real quick. Oh, so Giga Berlin. Early in the investor call, Elon said that Giga Berlin was going to be the first battery line at full scale. So they are planning to build, and this was actually a question, and somebody was raising a question about it. Tesla is planning to build the high nickel battery cells in Giga Berlin and at scale. So, right, the pilot line is not scale. So whatever they're going to build in Berlin, and I'm predicting the first line is going to be in the ballpark of 30 gigawatt hours just on one line. Elon said, they said later in the call, that the pilot line at Fremont, which I think they're hoping to scale that to 10 gigawatt hours, that line is the 10th largest battery factory in the world. They've got this space in another building where they're building these battery cells. They're working on their battery cells, and it's already the 10th largest battery factory in the world. It's just mind-blowing, and it's not that big of a, and 10 largest, in one of the 10th largest in terms of the capacity to produce batteries, the gigawatt hours of batteries it can produce. Just amazing. So Berlin and Austin will be slow at first. Their output is going to become very large. This is more words from Elon. This is really important, and this is something I've anticipated. Fremont is a fairly small factory in comparison to what Tesla's hoping to achieve, and production is going to be limited. There's only so much they can produce there. I think as they improve their manufacturing technologies, I think they're going to take the improvements in Berlin and Austin and bring them over to Fremont, and we will see Fremont's Model Y line and Model 3 line eventually become more productive. But I don't know if Fremont's ever going to produce much more than 1 million vehicles a year. It might. I don't want to rule it out, but I don't know if it's going to produce much more than that. I think that Berlin and Austin are going to produce a lot more vehicles. I think Berlin and Austin are going to be 2 million vehicles or more a year, maybe more than that. So when Elon says very large, I don't know what that means. And he said he expected it to take 12 to 18 months to reach capacity, or 12 to 24 months. Well, if Berlin and Austin achieve 2 million vehicles a year in 2 years from when they start in 2021, that'd be in 2023, the two of them together are producing 4 million vehicles. So because that's, very large is very large. So there's real potential for Berlin and Austin to produce huge volumes of vehicles. I don't, it's hard to know where Elon's going with that, but I think that's where he's going. So I think they're going to be amazing. Let's see. Zach Kirkhorn spoke. He said regulatory. This is a surprise. One of the criticisms of the Tesla Q, Tesla skeptic crowd, the bears, is that Tesla's too reliant on regulatory credits. And I don't understand why that's a problem. If they're making regulatory credits, are some country wants the car manufacturers to produce zero emissions vehicles, and the car companies can't produce them at scale. So in order to satisfy the government, they pay Tesla to use Tesla's zero emission vehicles as credits for what they're doing. So Tesla's making money on that. Well, I don't see why this is a problem. It's like free money, okay? Because Tesla doesn't have internal combustion engine vehicles to offset. So they have regulatory credits they can sell, and there's plenty of companies that want to buy them. So Tesla makes extra money. But Zach said that their their margins are improving this regardless of regulatory credits. So it's not critical to the business, but to me, that's good news. They're seeing improved vehicle reliability. Well, another common complaint that you'll hear about Tesla is panel gaps or other things, and oh, Teslas aren't reliable. All these people have these complaints. I think it's all nonsense. Everything I've seen is consumers are saying really good things about Tesla, that their ratings are really high from consumers. But Zach made a point of saying improved vehicle reliability. They're seeing fewer problems with their vehicles. That's great news. Record storage deployment. Let's see. He said something, and I didn't catch this. It was about 12 minutes into the call. Zach said that I didn't quite get it. He said something like they already paid for Shanghai. I think the Shanghai Model 3 factory and the Fremont Model Y factory have already paid for themselves. And I didn't understand whether he meant that as an accounting thing or he meant it as something else. Werner says Berlin will not produce 2 million cars in Berlin. They would need another building. This takes longer than 2 years. No, I think that, Werner, I think people underestimate what Tesla's doing, and they misunderstand what Tesla's doing. They're making vehicle production more efficient. They're going to be able to make more vehicles in less space. They're going to make more vehicles faster in less space. They're using less space because of this process where they're doing the front and rear castings. It eliminates like 300-400 parts. They found other ways. They're doing structural battery packs, so they're not making a skateboard anymore. That was another interesting bit I'll cover later. So the process of making vehicles, the best part. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to sell my merch, by the way. This is one of my new shirts. The machine that builds the machine. That's Giga Berlin. So check out the merch in the description below. Or here, let's see. I got a bunch of T-shirts, so check out my T-shirts. But the process, they're building the machine that builds the machine. And really, at one point in the call, he said they were building the machine that builds the machine that builds the machine. So the factory builds the cars, and the process that they're using for making the cars is making that difference. They're going to build 2 million in Berlin, and I think they might build more than that. So go back to my notes here. Megapack is a large, this is from RJ Johnson about energy. Megapack is a large growth segment. Demand is, this was stunning to me. Demand is greater than supply through 2021. In other words, they're making Megapacks as fast as they can, and they can't sell them as fast. They can't make them enough to cover all the demand. And he said they have an order book through 2023. So there is a backlog of demand for Megapack. Megapack, if you don't know Megapack, Powerwall is grid storage for the home. And Powerwall is grid storage for the home, and Megapack is grid storage at the utility level. And by the way, there's another product called PowerPack, and I think Tesla may be phasing out PowerPack. I think Elon has decided that the market for PowerPack was too small, and that most of the customers that wanted PowerPacks could be upsold to Megapacks. So I think we're going to see the power, and they were discussing Powerwall and Megapack, and they just left out PowerPack in the conversation. Powerwall is about 13.5 kilowatt hours. It's typically installed in a home or a small business. Megapack is 3 megawatt hours, which is way bigger. It's like 100 times. It's 200 times. I think that's 200 times the storage of Powerwall. And Megapack is the kind of thing they put in at a utility installation. So it seems like the PowerPack is gone. But demand for Megapack is huge and growing. They're seeing increased demand for Powerwall. They have a large backlog for Powerwall. this is, and RJ specifically talked, this was something I was surprised at. RJ talked about Powerwall feeding into the grid. I thought that was really, really striking, that Powerwall will feed into the grid. I didn't think that was clear. I know that there are places where they've talked about it, but it seems like it's now a big part of Tesla's strategy, is that Powerwalls are going to feed into the grid, and that's going to help support, it's going to make grids more reliable. So that was big. Okay, I covered that. Let's see what else we got. When we get to the Q&A, somebody asked, I think this was a question about the 4680 cell and Giga Berlin, and the question was whether, this was one of the say.com or saytechnologies.com questions, whether Giga Berlin would be putting in cell lines at the same time as the vehicles. And I think the answer to the question, it wasn't answered directly, but I think the answer to the question was no. I think that the Fremont pilot line is going to be supplying 4680 cells to Berlin, which is not ideal, and it's not the long-term plan because you want local supply. But in the short run, they're going to be supplying 4680 cells from Fremont to Berlin. But Drew Baglino, the chief technology officer for Tesla, the guy who was on the stage on Battery Day with Elon, said that the 4680 cell would be designed into many applications over time. And this struck me because I figured that 4680 was going to be standardized into all the vehicles over time. But the way he said it, I think he also means for grid storage. And I think what we're going to see is, and there was something in the news today, I think, that Tesla has a deal with LG Chem. I should have done a slide of that. Tesla has a deal with LG Chem, or LG Chem announced that they're going to be making a new cylindrical size working with Tesla. So it's pretty clear that LG Chem is going to be developing a 4680 cell for Tesla. And it's probably going to be nickel manganese, but it could be lithium iron phosphate. I expect to see CATL, the Chinese company. LG Chem is a South Korean company. CATL is a Chinese company, and Panasonic is Tesla's big supplier in the US, is a Japanese company. I expect to see CATL adopting the 4680 cell format for iron phosphate cells and maybe other cells. And I expect to see Panasonic adopting that format too. And I think my expectation is that Tesla is going to work with its suppliers and help them implement the 4680 tabless format. And they're basically going to do it for free, in the sense Tesla's not going to charge them for the engineering help, but they're going to do it in terms of, you're guaranteeing us a supply. They're going to have a long-term supply contract that's going to grow, so Tesla can get more and more batteries to satisfy their needs. And this is a critical point I feel like a lot of people don't understand. Some people think, well, Tesla should just become the world's biggest battery maker. And I think that misses the point. Batteries ultimately are a commodity. Even if short-term you have an edge, in the long run, battery is going to be a commodity business. And when you invest your capital in a battery factory, in the long run, that's not going to be a high return on investment, because there will be competition and your profits are going to be limited. If you invest your resources in self-driving cars, in cars themselves, and in autonomy and software, the profit on your investment is much bigger, and your impact in terms of accelerating the transition to sustainable energy is much bigger. So I just wanted to cover that. Let's see. Somebody asked if the tabless design, this is an interesting question. I was a little bit surprised at this answer. Someone asked if the tabless design was going to help increase the peak charging rate, and the answer sounded like no. It wasn't a direct no, but it sounded like a no. The answer was that the tabless design helps reduce heating. The cell doesn't get as hot, and that's, I can get technical about why that is. But the problem with peak charging rates is anode plating and something to do with electrolytes, I think, or electrodes. So the design so far does not solve that problem, or at least the tablets does not solve that problem. Anode plating is something that interferes with the exchange of ions across the cell. And I don't know if they have that solved yet. I think, that's why you just need more range, and then you don't care about charging time as much. There was somebody, as a common question I see on Twitter, is Tesla going to allow people to transfer the FSD they bought in their current Tesla to the Tesla that they buy next? And Elon just said, we'll give it some thought, which I took as a no, but we'll see. Somebody asked about the remaining constraints in the solar roof ramp. The answer was that they need to get more. They're getting installers on board. They're improving material flow on the job site. So the guys are up on the roof and they got some parts of the roof. Do they have the right parts? Is everything packaged so when the guy goes up on the roof and gets something, he has everything he needs so he doesn't have to run down the ladder and come back up again? And that makes the workflow better. So that's a challenge that they're working on. They're having a great response from third-party installers. That's making progress. Elon was very passionate about this. This is where it was. I was going to talk about this earlier. Elon is very, very passionate about solar roof. You could hear it in his voice. The future, think about what you want in the future. You want beautiful roofs that are generating energy. That's the future we want. And he said solar roof is going to become a killer product, and we're going to see it next year. So Elon is expecting solar roof to ramp and sell a heck of a lot of them next year. And I think that also has to mean we're going to see a big scale up of Powerwall, which means we have to see a big scale up of batteries for Powerwall, which means I think we're going to see CATL ramping up production of lithium iron phosphate. Or maybe, I don't know where I think that's the big question, is where are the batteries coming from for Powerwall next year? If all the cell lines are going to expanding vehicle production, there has to be more batteries coming from somewhere, and I don't know the answer to that yet. So, somebody asked a question about them being a conglomerate, and there's a dozen startups, and Elon had I think this is sort of like I don't really understand the point of that conversation, so maybe I'm not the right person to talk about it. There was a really interesting point where Elon talked about the internal applications team. A lot of companies run on Oracle software or Microsoft software. There's this category of software called enterprise software. And I haven't really worked, other than in my youth, I worked at Allstate Insurance. And I think that was before enterprise software was a big thing. A lot of major companies run on something called enterprise software. And Elon is saying we don't run outside enterprise software. We developed our own in-house. And this is critical to how the company runs, and it enables a lot of things, including Tesla Insurance. And I was a little surprised at this. Elon made a big deal about Tesla Insurance. He said it could be 30 to 40% of the value of the car business. And I don't agree. So I'm going to say this now. Now, if you have to choose between believing me and believing Elon, I would say believe Elon. But I just don't get how insurance could possibly be that big of a revenue. And I'll tell you why. Let's suppose Tesla signed up 1 million customers, okay, paying for Tesla insurance. Now, I pay $1,500 a year for each car. In my house, we have 2 cars. We pay about $1,500 a year for each car, more or less. Tesla insurance is going to sell if it costs less than other insurance. So let's use a simple number. Let's suppose Tesla insurance costs $1,000 a year per car, and Tesla sells 1 million cars. Tesla insurance on 1 million cars. That's $1 billion in revenue. That is not a needle-moving number. They would have to sell, even with 10 million, my vision for Tesla long-term, and I'm talking about 2022, which isn't that far off, is we're going to see Tesla doing $100 billion in revenue or more, 120 billion, 150 billion, 200 billion coming really soon. $2 billion in revenue doesn't move the needle. So I don't get. It was interesting that Elon said insurance is big, because I don't think insurance is big. Like I said, choosing whether to believe Elon or me, you probably want to believe Elon, but I don't see. I think Tesla insurance helps sell the cars, but it can't be that big of a revenue. I think there was another side to insurance that they talked about in a previous call, I think, was that Tesla insurance helps them know how the vehicles need to be repaired, and it helps them design the vehicles better for future repairs. So there's a feedback loop with insurance that helps in some ways with the business, but I just don't see the revenue side mattering. Okay, there was a question from institutional investors. I didn't like this question, but I thought they did okay with it. I thought Elon's answer was brilliant. Somebody asked about ride-hailing as a bridge some sort of ride-hailing thing, or letting people who own Teslas use the Tesla app to rent their car out to somebody else like Turo. And I think Elon just thought this was a stupid question, but he said, he's really simply, and was really short, he just dismissed it, we're going to focus on enabling robotaxi. And he said at least one other time in the call, he talked about robotaxi. The profit story of robotaxi is going to be stunning. I've been saying this for a while. Elon's been saying it. I don't think people are getting it. Wall Street certainly isn't getting it. The margins on robotaxi are going to be insane. So, yes, and I agree, Steve West. If FSD works, if full self-driving works, if the autonomous vehicles works, then the number of accidents falls. We have 1/10 the accidents. We have 1/100 the accidents. There's nothing to insure anymore. So I don't see how insurance is a big deal in the long term. Okay. I'm gonna go off topic for a second because Ernest asked a question that I love talking about. Ernest asks, do you think the current onboard chips are adequate? And my answer is yes, but I think they are good enough, but they could be better. And in 2019 at Tesla Autonomy Day, Elon talked about how they were already working on the next version of the chip, that they had been working on the next version of the chip for 2 years before that, so 2017, and then it's a 4-year cycle, which means the FSD version 4 chip should be coming in 2021. And he said at the Autonomy Day, he said expected to be 3 times better in every way. So in terms of the performance of handling the robotaxi job, the reading what comes through the cameras and managing the operation of the vehicle, I think the current chips are already adequate. Better, faster doesn't hurt. It never hurts to have faster processors. It never hurts to have more RAM, whatever it is. But what was big was, what's big about it is I bet they're going to use less power, and that's going to increase range. I think the current chips take about 10 miles of range or 20 miles of range off the car. The consumption of energy by the full self-driving chips is fairly substantial, and then working on getting it down. But if they can get it down lower, so I think we're going to see these chips being lower power. They're going to use about 1/3 of the power, and it's going to increase range 10 to 20 miles. That's a guess. So let's see. So look for FSD4 next year, look for Dojo next year, look for robotaxi to blow everyone away. People are talking about the full self-driving rewrite is an early beta right now, and it should roll out to everyone by the end of this year. I don't expect that the autonomy software is going to be that amazing this year. It's not that it's going to be better right away, it's that it's going to learn faster, and the improvement in the full self-driving software is going to knock people's socks off next year. Not this year. So other people are really excited about it. I think they're getting carried away. There was also a question about HVAC, about the heat pump that's in the Model Y and it's now going into the Model 3, and how Tesla's going to use that in homes. And I think, Elon talked about it at Battery Day. There was this, I think it may have been Drew said that the HVAC units can operate, I think they can lower temperatures down to -20 Celsius or -30 Celsius, so they can really do a substantial job. And there's something about them integrating with, in the car, they use the heat of the battery pack to heat something else in the car, that they would be able to use the heat from the hot water heater to heat something else in the house, or the heat from the power walls. The heat pump will be able to take advantage of heat in other places, and it becomes much more efficient. So it reduces the overall energy usage of your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. So, I don't know what I wrote there. So margins will, this was the quote from Elon about robotaxi, because the Wall Street investors the Wall Street people are always asking about margins. Well, what are your margins? And margins improved. Elon said this, and the way he said it, margins will look comically small when compared to robotaxi or autonomy. The profit from the robotaxi system is gonna be insane. And that's, I think Tesla is expecting the robotaxi system to go live either end of 2021 or early 2022. The profits are going to be insane. It's going to massively increase the amount of cash they have, and that's going to further enable the long-term capital expansion, the long-term building factories, the long-term building battery factories, everything else they want to do. So, Question was, when will they have enough capacity of batteries? They said they're ramping up stationary storage a lot. Stationary storage is doubling this year, and it will double next year. And I think Elon made a joke about if you double something long enough, you take over the mass of the universe, and we're going to have to start using the planet Jupiter for raw material to make batteries. And that was a joke, but they are expecting stationary storage to ramp fast. That megapack demand is huge. Powerwall demand is big and growing fast. And I think we're going to see the stationary storage side of the business grow huge. What contingencies for bottlenecks in cell production? Okay, so this was it was an interesting question. I wouldn't have thought of it, but I thought it was a good question. What contingencies does Tesla have in place for bottlenecks in battery cell production? And Elon and Drew's answer was basically, we're not counting on our own internal cell production in 2021. That their expectations for production in 2021 depend entirely on outside suppliers, so that's not really something that's constrained by problems with cell production. And then they said the pilot line in Fremont is one of the top 10 cell factories in the world. Kind of cool. All right. Analyst questions. Rod Lachey from Wolf something. He asked, this was a great question. He asked about the targets from Battery Day, and he talked about 20 million vehicles by 2030. He asked what Elon's projection was going to be for 2025 based on this path to get to 20 million vehicles in 2030, and Elon wouldn't bite. Elon was basically saying, look, it's an exponential curve. If I give you a number for 2025, it could be an off by a year, it could be that number a year earlier, it could be that number a year later. Exponential curves move so fast, it's really hard to predict. So, if everything operates in Elon time, then the 20 million vehicles by 2030 might be optimistic. I think we're going to see some really big changes in how Tesla does things. Like, I think this compact robotaxi that they hinted at Battery Day is going to be much easier to produce in much higher volume, and they're going to produce a lot more of them than people realize. It's not just that it's a $25,000 vehicle. It's going to be the manner of production and the volume of production and the speed of production and the ability to produce. And I suspect it's going to be hyper efficient. It's going to be able to get by with a smaller battery pack. And it's going to be lithium iron phosphate, which is cheaper. They're going to deliver a huge volume of that. Yeah, Andy, I think 2 million is possible in 2022. I agree with that. So he was also they were asked about solid state lithium metal. This analyst, Rod Lachey, asked about solid state lithium metal. And this is the thing. There's all these people who think there's some new battery technology coming that's going to displace what Tesla's doing. And I will tell you my own opinion that lithium iron phosphate cells, which are less than what Tesla's been using now, are already good enough that battery electric vehicles are already better than internal combustion engine vehicles with cells that aren't that impressive. So once you get, and I've been looking at these high nickel cells and how they're going to deploy them, and it's almost like it doesn't matter. The nickel manganese cells that they're going to be using are so good anyway. Even the nickel cobalt aluminum cells that they're using now. Look, the Tesla Model S is possibly the best car ever made. The Tesla Model Y is arguably the best car in the world, if you're not including the Tesla Model S, or maybe they're both the best cars in the world. They're already making the best cars in the world with the battery technology they had last year. They're advancing to a new battery technology. So somebody comes out with some better battery technology that's got a little bit more energy density. Yeah, it matters for electric planes, but it doesn't matter for cars anymore. What matters is the cost of the battery, the cost per kilowatt hour. If you can get the cost per kilowatt hour down, you can make the vehicle. If you can increase the volume of production of the battery cells and you can get the cost per kilowatt hour down, that's what drives the market, not whether you've got some fancy new cell that has higher energy density. So, all right. So they kind of dismissed lithium metal, and it was a kind of a surprising thing. There's this idea that a battery cell that has lithium metal anode instead of an anode that uses graphite or silicon would somehow be better. And Drew just tossed it. He said it's counterintuitive, but he said silicon holds more lithium than lithium metal holds. In other words, you get more density of lithium ions in silicon than you get in lithium metal. It was really striking. So that blew me away. And so the idea that there's going to be some sort of lithium metal cell, that's not going to happen. That's not going to do anything. It doesn't move the needle. Colin Rush of Oppenheimer talked about insourcing. He asked about insourcing, and I think there was this question about how they do it, and Elon went on this, I would almost call it a rant. He talked about how vertically integrated Tesla is, and he says it's very difficult to copy Tesla. He talked about the contrasting styles that internal combustion engine companies that make regular cars, they have this process where they have suppliers supply this thing and that thing, and then they're basically I think he called it catalog manufacturing, that they get a part from here and a part from there and they put it together into a vehicle. And Tesla doesn't do it that way. Tesla has this sort of holistic, let's start from the ground up and build the vehicle, and they basically make almost everything themselves. And so you can't just copy Tesla's model by just copying the cars. You have to copy the production model, which means you have to make everything in-house, which means you need a heck of a lot of engineering and great people, and it's really, really hard to do. So, and that's where he made the remark, the machine. That's why I wore this shirt today. The machine, I got the machine that builds the machine, or the machine that makes the machine, but he was talking about the machine that makes the machine that makes the machine. That inside the factory, they have machines that make the machines that make the cars. And the Tesla is the machine that makes the machines. You can go deep on that. He said they make a crazy amount of machinery internally. And that's something that, others, it's hard to copy that. There's a question about balance sheet and how... There was a question about the balance sheet, and this insurance product came up again. Maybe that was in the question. And Elon talked about how Tesla insurance is basically being made by the internal applications team I mentioned earlier, that it's a very low capital thing to develop Tesla insurance, and it has a very high return. In other words, they make, when they sell insurance to a customer, they make a lot of money because they're able to determine, using the internal applications, they're able to determine how risky that vehicle is, and they're able to price insurance appropriately. So, and there was this question about how they're investing their money in making capital investments to grow. And Elon said they spend money as fast as they can, but they're trying to make sure that they spend it sensibly and not waste it. And he says there's always going to be some waste, but they need to spend a lot of money, and they're spending a lot of money to grow, but they just got to be careful how they do it. Let's see. Oh, this is a great question. Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley, who's one of the more prominent analysts, asked Elon if they would use LiDAR in the cars if it was totally free. In other words, if somebody just gave them LiDAR units to put on the cars, would they use it? And Elon said no. And he didn't really explain why. I think you have to recognize that one of the problems with LiDAR is it uses energy, and that's going to shrink range. He didn't say it, but I think that may have been part of it. He was asked about Amazon and whether he had any advice for Amazon and Bezos on how they should pursue an autonomy network. And he said focus on autonomy and vision, something about path optical. I didn't really get that. That was over my head. Pierre Farragut, who was recently interviewed by one of the other Tesla YouTubers, just interviewed Pierre Farragut, and he asked about the Cybertruck ramp. I didn't think this question was really answered. Elon did talk about that he just met with Franz and the design team, and there are already a lot of small improvements to Cybertruck that are underway, that the vehicle that they deliver when they deliver Cybertruck will be significantly better than the vehicle that they displayed at the reveal. Let's see. He said it's hard to predict what's going to happen. There's a lot of new technologies. He talked in particular about the high hardness armored exoskeleton. So Cybertruck has that steel exterior that's actually the exoskeleton. That's the frame of the vehicle and the exterior. And he said because of the high hardness, it's also difficult to form. He predicted, and I was surprised that maybe they're going to underpromise and overdeliver here, but he said he expects deliveries to start end of 2021. Now keep in mind, let's pull this up here, in the vehicle capacity chart, if you look here, you can see that the Model Y in Texas is under construction, but the Cybertruck is in development. So it's pretty clear that Cybertruck will be after Model Y. It's not clear how long after Model Y, but it sounds like they're not even close to starting construction of the Cybertruck factory yet. I think they're still working out how are we going to make this thing before they start building the factory to make it? So it's very difficult to forecast how the deliveries are going to be, but he anticipates some deliveries towards the end of 2021. Now, I put my reservation in day one, within the first hour of the Cybertruck reveal. So I'm hoping I'm pretty quick. If they do dual motor and tri-motor same time, then I'm going to be pretty quick because I'm a dual motor. If they only do tri-motors first, then I'm going to be later. Then there's a theory they're going to do dual motors first. So I'm hoping to get my Cybertruck by the end of 2021. But he expects that the production and deliveries will increase substantially in 2022. Farragut also asked a question that it was pretty clear that there's these moments in the investor calls when you're like, okay, something wasn't right there. So he asked a question about production capacity for 2020 and if he thought it would be in the ballpark of 840,000 to a million for 2021. And Zach Kirkhorn stepped in and said, we're going to offer guidance for that for 2021 after the next earnings call. And then Elon said, well, you're not far off. So Zach Kirkhorn clearly did not want to answer that question. And then Elon kind of went ahead and answered it anyway. Although he said not far off. So what does that mean? So it was kind of a goofy answer. Dan Levy of Credit Suisse. Where's the Model Y? Something about gross margins. Oh, there was a question and Zach answered about gross margins. He said that there was very little. One of the things that happens every quarter is Tesla's taken all this money from customers for the full self-driving. Right now it's, I think, $8,000 to buy the full self-driving option on a Tesla. And they don't recognize all that revenue because the full self-driving isn't fully, as an accounting thing, they don't recognize all that revenue. So it doesn't go to profit because some of that, not all of it goes to profit because not all the revenue is recognized. So they're holding the cash, but they don't count it as profit yet, and they don't count it as revenue yet. And he said they only recognized $10 million of revenue from the full self-driving improvements in this quarter. So that was a trivial number. That was not significant. I think there's a really good chance that quarter four, we're going to see a big number for FSD revenue recognition as they roll out the feature complete full self-driving by the end of this year. There's a question about the strategy in Europe and pricing after the ramp. And Zach kind of didn't really answer that question. He said, we're trying to increase production so we don't have to... we're trying to increase production so when I forget, I didn't write my notes down well. Prioritize. There's this challenge. You know, one of the big things is produce on every continent, and then it's easier to distribute the vehicles locally. And when they are producing, you know, certain volume of vehicles and demand outstrips the volume, the production, they've got to prioritize where are we going to ship these vehicles. So if they can increase production, they don't have to prioritize where are these vehicles going. They just ship them locally. Gene Munster asked about semi-mega chargers. Platooning did not get answered. He didn't really answer autonomy. Jerome, I think it's Guillen, said that the current superchargers they decided were not going to be enough to charge semi, so they're working on the infrastructure to come up with mega chargers. There have been some pictures in the wild of, you know, some prototype mega chargers out there, so we think that's coming. And this is where Elon said, he said semi consumes a lot of cells, so they can't really produce semi until they produce more cells. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the primary destination for the 4680 high nickel cells coming out of Fremont is going to be for semi. But Elon said that semi uses 4 to 5 times as many batteries as a regular vehicle. And I think he's wrong, but you know, he knows a lot more about it than I do. So they got to solve the cell constraints so they can build semi. My numbers, I mean, if he's right, it changes my numbers a lot. On my numbers, if the 500 mile range semi uses 1,000 kilowatt hours or a megawatt hour of cells, then it's not very good in revenues per kilowatt hour. But if Elon is not blowing smoke and the 500 mile range semi only uses 500 kilowatt hours of cells, then semi becomes a lot more sensible in revenue in dollars per kilowatt hour of revenue. So that was kind of cool. So let's see. Ben Callow from Baird asked about the biggest structural issue. So there was this question about what's wrong with old school original equipment manufacturers, the existing ICE industry, and Elon talked about, he sort of asked, is Tesla going to be the only car company? And Elon said there will be other car companies. It's a really interesting challenge because Tesla is becoming so competitive that it's hard to see how other vehicle manufacturers are going to survive. I think Elon is expecting that new vehicle manufacturers will rise. I don't think, it looks like it's the end for the internal combustion engine car industry. They're just not going to be able to keep up. And so China has electric vehicle manufacturers. Maybe Rivian will make it. Maybe there'll be some other companies, but they really need to start from the ground up in order to be able to build competitive EVs. So, sorry. Philippe, I think, Bourgeois from Jefferies. The business model for stationary storage. So this is an interesting question. So, and I've had this thought, I never really articulated. I think this guy asked the question better than I would. It's really surprisingly good questions, mostly from the analyst this time. Usually our questions are much more quarterly focused, and I thought this was a brilliant question. Are they selling grid storage like Megapack? Just, here's a Megapack, pay us $1 million. I'm making up the number $1 million, but here's X dollars for each Megapack. Or is there some model where Tesla makes ongoing revenue from having sold the item and continuing to get money from it afterwards? And there was a reference to, I think it's the Hornsdale plant in Australia, where they have this big Megapack battery. They have this huge battery in Australia, and I think it was Zach said we are making revenue from the power plant in Australia. And this is where they talked about Powerwall and Megapack, and they didn't mention PowerPack at all. I think PowerPack is done. It's kind of surprising because I just saw there was just something about the price went down for PowerPack. I wonder if it's being phased out. That's right. I think that's a question I would love somebody to ask. Is PowerPack going to survive, or is PowerPack being phased out? He followed up with a question about whether the skateboard is obsolete. If you ever look at an older Tesla or a lot of other vehicles like the Lucid that was displayed, or the recent Hummer reveal of the GM EV Hummer reveal, there's this concept that there's this skateboard, and you got the wheels, and you've got the suspension, and you've got this flat spot for the batteries, and that's the model that Tesla has been using and others have been using. And with Tesla going to structural battery pack and the front and rear castings, the skateboard is basically gone. And the question was, is that going to be obsolete? And Elon said, well, when you have the structural battery pack, the skateboard basically becomes duplicate hardware, because if the structural battery pack is part of the structure of the car, then having a skateboard adds unnecessary hardware and unnecessary weight. So, and there was a moment where he said something that kind of caught me off guard. It sounded like he was talking about the batteries would also serve as structure in energy and grid storage. I'm not sure if he meant that or if he was still talking about vehicles, but that was really interesting. And he thought there would be a several-year transition away from skateboards. So that's my notes. So now I'm going to look at some questions. So if you have questions, fire them up now. Let's see. Sorry. Let's see. Powerwall 3 or a house pack. Power pack price purging. They did have a windfall profit when power was disrupted in Australia, so figure the Megapack provided power when the existing provider. Yes, I knew there was a surge in profit from the Hornsdale Reserve when there was a problem. I didn't know Tesla got any of the money. And I don't know that, when I mentioned that about, I don't know that why grid storage would need structural batteries. I didn't understand that. That's the thing I didn't, it seems like that doesn't matter. Seasonal sinus allergies? I don't know. I don't think it's seasonal sinus allergies. Sorry. I think I just get an itchy nose. My sinuses are much better here in Florida than they were in New York, I'll say that. So Tesla is integrating the cells as structure now, or planned to in the future. At the Battery Day reveal, they described how the Model Y that's being built in Berlin, and probably the Model Y that's going to be built in Austin, will use a structural battery pack. If you check out Battery Day, or just Google structural battery pack, you'll see it. Tesla will get contract to build charging stations in Mars, in the moon, sure. You guys have questions? Fire away. Scroll back a little bit. Let's see what we got. So the guy spelled, oh, somebody said the car charge. So here's an interesting question. There was this thing about the chargers, and I forget who his name was. He dropped, I think it was Jerome, said something about that the 350 kilowatt hours wasn't enough. And I saw this conversation on Twitter. Somebody said he let it slip. The current version 3 chargers are only supposed to be 250 kilowatt hours or kilowatts. So 350 kilowatts was a slip that reveals that version 4 of supercharger is going to be 350 kilowatts. Somebody else said, no, version 3 is already 350 kilowatts. The cars can't do it. So I'm not sure about that. No, I just have an itchy nose. I probably should have washed my face before. Interested to hear about future expansion. Yeah, that question, that should have been a question. I mean, given that the Indonesia story broke yesterday, Indonesia should have been a question today. I'm surprised it wasn't asked. 4680 will be bulkheads or structure in spacecraft. Interesting idea. Ship hulls. It's going to be really interesting to see how the 46, will it be some new format that follows on 4680? Look, 4680 is going to be great. The 4680 cylindrical cell format is going to be great. How does it play out down the road? That's going to be really interesting to see. Do I think Tesla will ever go to hub wheel motors? That is kind of an over my head question. I don't think so. I think they're pretty happy with the system that they have. I think it's working really well. I think there would have to be a reason why that was better, and I haven't seen it yet. Let me just try this. I'm wetting my nose. Maybe my nose is dry. So, let's see. Solar will be evident next year. Yeah, that was big. I mentioned that earlier. He talked about Solar Roof is going to be huge next year. So keep your eyes out for Solar Roof. Solar Roof is going to knock everybody's socks off next year. Will Teslas be integrated with Starlink? No. Bill T asks if Teslas will be integrated with Starlink. Elon gave a definite no to that recently. Cars do not need the bandwidth that Starlink delivers. 5G is plenty. Does paint matter that much? Would the cyber version of the new Model Y 4680 with casting be cheaper to make? I don't think there's any plan to make a cyber version of Model Y, and I think they've come up with massive improvements in how they make Model Y that makes it competitive anyway. And I think they're doing something special with Paint Shop too. Don't you think if FSD stays with the individual as opposed to the vehicle, more people would buy FSD? I don't know. Can't wait to fly on SpaceX planes, go to Australia from the US in about 30 minutes. Well, I wonder, that's probably another a conversation for another day. I think that's I don't know how much demand there is to travel those distances. How many people will fill, but if there's enough people to fill Starship. Separates motor from internal build components, much easier to swap. I don't know the answer to whether hub motors are better. Warren, less is more, you're trying too hard. What am I trying too hard at? Remote access of Cybertruck off-road. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think Cybertruck will be capable of going off-road. I'm not sure what the remote access has to do with it. So JC asks if Tesla insurance is big or not. I think I answered that question earlier, but I'll do it again. Elon said Tesla insurance is going to be big. Elon was very clear. He thinks Tesla insurance is going to be huge. I don't agree with him, but you got to decide who you're going to believe. Are you going to believe Elon or me? And I would go with Elon over me if I were you. Sorry. Hopefully that helps. So my analysis is that if you had 1 million vehicles earning $1,000 a year in revenue, it would be $1 billion, and that's trivial in Tesla's future revenue. I'm bummed about Tesla Solar not being available in my state as I would buy for my house. I think that Tesla Solar is expanding everywhere they can. The vibrations of speaking causes your nose to itch. That's crazy. The mega HVAC combining HVAC, water heater, power, water purifier. I actually kind of think this was a great idea. Somebody else said this to me. What if Tesla came up with a house? What if they skipped just doing HVAC and they came up with a new model for a house? We've got this new house design. Here's how the houses are going to go, and we've got this HVAC that goes with it, Starlink that goes with it, and Solar Roof that goes with it, and they just start selling houses. And I think that this is housing is a market that is ripe for disruption. Really huge potential for that. I would love to see that happen. That's something that no one's talked about. I would love to see a Tesla house. Add 10 cents for insurance per robotaxi mile. Robotaxis aren't going to have accidents. What do you need insurance for? Tesla's going to own the robotaxi. If there's a robotaxi accident, Tesla's on the hook for it because Tesla's driving the car. Rob Moore had numbers that solar was 2.7% profit margin. The roof itself isn't a great profit margin just yet, but the associated packs do get solid margins. Yeah, I think the margins from the pack are good, and I think as they improve solar roof production and as they improve install, then the margins get a lot better. Starship for point-to-point will not be efficient for Tesla, as others are already producing rapid travel systems business. Okay, I know we're going off topic here, but I like Starship point-to-point, so let's talk about that. Somebody else asked about this. Here's the problem with Starship. First of all, Starship point-to-point is going to be faster than anything else, and it's going to be cheaper than anything else if they can get it to work. Here's the problem. How many people a day travel from Sydney, Australia to Los Angeles, California? Okay. How many people does Starship seat? I think if Starship only seats 100 people, then it's a really expensive flight. If Starship seats 1,000 people, then it's a reasonably priced flight, but I don't think there's 1,000 people making that trip every day. That's the problem that I think people aren't talking about, is the market big enough for... And what city pairs? Because the most common city city-to-city travel are cities that are fairly close to each other. And the farther apart the cities get, the farther apart the cities get. Let me see if I got that right. The farther apart the cities get, the less people are traveling between the cities. Now, if Starship gets that fast and it gets reasonably priced, does the volume of people traveling from city to city on those long distance routes increase? Maybe, but I don't know if it's enough to sustain Starship. That's a different conversation. I should probably do a video about that. I thought I already did a video about that. Maybe I need to do another one. Let's see. AI swarm technology. What about all motorboats and yachts going electric? That will happen. It's just going to take time. Does solar make any sense? 50%? Yes, it does. I think solar makes sense most places. I don't know. I think somebody else could answer the question. Does solar work through the clouds? I think it does I think you do get some energy through clouds. I think it's something like 90% of the ultraviolet light goes through the clouds anyway. I don't know how solar does it, but I think it does it. The Starship market would develop. But once a month isn't enough volume to make sense. No discussion on the Boring Company. I wasn't planning on talking about the Boring Company today. They are making great progress in Las Vegas. I'm probably going to make a video about the Boring Company in a couple of weeks. Tesla house, they can mass produce. Yes. No, I think maybe I need to do a video about this idea of Tesla house. I think Tesla making housing would be phenomenal. You know, one of the things that Elon does is he enters businesses that are ripe for disruption. And if you've ever bought a new house from a builder, it is a process that often feels very uncomfortable. That the builders have a lot of control. The builders make huge profits. A lot of people are unhappy with the results. There's all kinds of issues with it. I think Tesla could probably come up with a way of making a house for a heck of a lot less money, with a heck of a lot more features, with a lot more efficiency. I think there's real potential for that to be amazing. Does the 4680 work for planes? I think that when they get to... This is Califer Dale asks, does the 4680 work for planes? I think when they get to 400 watt hours per kilogram, then I think that Elon expects to be there in 3 years, then it would work. I personally think that the airline industry, the air travel industry is going to die, that robo-taxis are going to cover short haul routes. Loops and hyperloops are going to cover, Boring Company loops and hyperloops are going to cover medium routes and longer distance routes. Hyperloop's going to be as fast as a plane. And then for the long trips, Starship's going to be faster. So I don't know that there's much market left for airplanes. Thank you, JC. When do you think Tesla will only make robo-taxis and not sell cars? You know, that's my theory. Elon has said it before. I don't get the hint that they're talking about it. I thought the robo-taxi that they're talking about for 2023, that might be it. That might be the moment where they just really raise the price through the roof, and then that's it. Builders suck in general. I've dealt with several, and they're almost as bad as car repair ripoffs. Some new homes are almost lemons. Yeah, there's huge issues with the housing industry. Huge opportunity for Tesla to disrupt it. Like I'm looking at building my cyber cabin, and there are some cheap ways of doing it, but when you add everything together, it can add up to a lot of money. And if Tesla had a way of like, here's what we're going to do to, can you, like, just as an example, the foundation for the house, the thing I want to build is concrete. And concrete there's a lot of energy that goes into making concrete. Can Tesla come up with a better way of making a foundation that doesn't use so much energy? That would be amazing. Let's see. Starship would change the route every... No, it doesn't. There's not enough... That's not enough volume to make Starship... Heinzbuck says... the Starship would change the route every day. Tokyo one day and Beijing the next. Then the market would be adequate. Then you don't have that many Starships. Then it's not significant. People don't want to fly to Tokyo. People want to fly to Tokyo when they want to fly to Tokyo. They don't want to wait till when the plane's going. GeoShip is also set to disrupt the housing industry. What's GeoShip? Thomas Gorman, if you would please put a comment with a link to whatever GeoShip is, I will take a look at that. I haven't heard of that before. Printed house. Elon said 3D printing was not very efficient. It's hard to scale 3D printing. He thinks casting's better. Well, no, what I'm saying, Califer Dale, is instead of entering the cement business or the concrete business, is there a better material that can be used for the same function? Let's see. Carbon sequestered in concrete, yeah. Lithium mining using salt is a great environmentally sensitive method. I'm not sure you can apply that to other operations. I don't think you can. The Boring Company will be making bricks. I think that the bricks only work with certain materials that they bore through, and I don't think sand is one of them. So, let's see. Just a reminder, my Patreon's here. Should be a link to it in the description. Anybody your support's greatly appreciated. It helps me do what I'm doing. And I have a big video coming on Saturday morning, I think, about Tesla's future, and what happened today will help me make that video. This conversation is probably going to change what I do in that video. 3D printing is the future for Mars and things like concrete basements. Pete, Elon talked about 3D printing. Somebody asked him about it and said it wasn't good for volume production. They do 3D printing at SpaceX. They do some 3D printing, I think, at Tesla as well, but it's not great for doing volume. If you're doing high volumes of stuff, it doesn't work. Will Tesla start iterating on the next 4680 battery pack now, or wait till it's being high volume manufactured? I think they're working on 4680 now, and it's going to be a while before they do something else. I think the physics of the 4680 just makes sense. So nothing else makes sense. 39 minutes travel anywhere on Earth. Jim Bates, it's regolith, basically gritty granite, just add water and binder. Are you talking about Mars or are you talking about Earth? Always iterating, always. I don't know. I think they're iterating on making 4680 better for now. GeoShip is a subscription experiment. Please put that in the comment, Jim, because I'm not gonna see the chat until later. I won't see that. Love the Tesla house idea. Run with that. Okay, maybe that's gonna be a video. Mass-produced Tesla cabins or boats. Boats too? Yeah, I don't know. It's a boat. I don't know enough about the boat industry. Does the boat industry need innovation? What's that powder on your nose? Yeah, no, are you joking? I don't know. My nose is red. I don't know what that's coming from. Maybe it's the new shirt. This is the new shirt. I haven't washed it. Maybe that was my mistake. Insurance business just isn't going to be big enough. I talked about that a couple times already. I'm concerned that some of the government contracts will limit some space operations. Government's going to limit everything. That's the biggest threat to Tesla and our future is government, but that's my Warren being a libertarian, so don't pay too much attention to me. People think I'm crazy when I talk like that. Oh, the regolith is local materials mean more to Mars. Yes, I agree that regolith is going to be big for Mars. I think tunneling is going to be big. Tractors. I think Elon wants small business to be able to profit from autonomous vehicles. I'm not sure about that. Warren is red. So, hey, just a reminder, the machine that builds the machine, the new t-shirts. Check out the description below for a link to the merch. Got a bunch of shirts. Let's pump the shirts again. Here's the t-shirts. The one on this one is, it says in Japanese, Chinese characters for Japanese, it says electric car. Technically, the Japanese word for that is 5 characters, not 3. This is an abbreviation. Elon Be Less Wrong comes from Elon says we're always wrong. The goal is to be less wrong. Best part is no part. Best process is no process. And this shirt, the machine that builds the machine. Check out the merch below and the link. Boat engines suffer a lot of wear and tear, especially in saltwater. I wonder if Tesla, if there's some learning from SpaceX rescuing the fairings from saltwater, from the ocean water, if they can apply that to the boat industry. Nice t-shirt. Thank you for your comments on the shirt. Free red nose. Hey, I don't know what's going on with my nose. This is crazy. Are you concerned? Zach said payback times for Berlin and Austin would exceed Shanghai, which means lower near-term margins for vehicles from those factories since depreciation is spread over. I didn't hear Zach say that about Berlin and Austin. I heard him say that Shanghai, it sounded like Shanghai and Fremont Model Y, Shanghai 3 and Fremont Y were already paid back. I think the short-term paybacks they're going to ramp up production slowly. So in the short term, it won't be paying back. But once they scale in 12 to 24 months, they're going to pay for themselves really fast. 75% of production is now automated. Does Tesla get to 100%? I think they're working on how they manufacture the vehicle. You know, the fact that they're using the front and rear castings and the structural battery pack, I think that eliminates a lot of the manual labor and enables a lot more automation. State regulators could limit the profits Tesla insurance makes. Tesla insurance is just never... Okay, I'm going to say this. I'm sorry. Tesla insurance... I disagree with Elon. Elon says different. Listen to Elon if you want to believe him. Tesla insurance is never going to make enough money. It's never going to make that much money. The average revenue per vehicle is going to be like $1,000 a vehicle. If you do 1 million vehicles, it's $1 billion. If you do 10 million vehicles, it's $10 billion. Tesla's revenue by 2023 is going to be like they're going to start approaching $200 billion in revenue. $10 billion doesn't move the needle. Tesla insurance is dead. Oh, I like that. Be less wrong. Yeah, that's like an inside joke. That's more of an inside joke. How is it to be libertarian in the U.S. for me? I can see people without health care, but I'm not communist socialist. I don't want to get into libertarian conversation. People get mad at me. That'll be another video someday. Maybe I'll make a libertarian video again. Governments and globalist hierarchies, bureaucracies are the greatest threat. Yes, absolutely. They build the autonomous drone ships. Pretty sure they could port the software and use it for cargo. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of potential for shipping, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Tesla go there. I think it's just too far afield from what they're doing now. And Elon has said, like, well, thank you, Brent. Brent, thank you so much for the contribution. Anybody who wants to give a super chat or super sticker, really appreciate any support we get. That would be greatly appreciated. The wiring cables was something that was not automated. Yeah, so the wiring... The current wiring approach is not something they can automate. I think there's a question about whether they can find a way to do the wiring in a way that works better. I'm not worried about the nose. It's just, it itches. I want it to stop itching because it itches. The slush fund needed for insurance provides an excellent base. It's just not enough money, Andy. I don't know why people don't get this. 1 million vehicles, $1,000 a year each. It's $1 billion. It's nothing. It's chump change. It's not enough money to matter. Thaddeus, are you a libertarian? Cruise boats are more than right. Yeah, cruise boats use, you know, a lot of these ships use a lot of fuel. They're polluting a lot in a lot of ways. And they flag the ships under countries that allow them more leeway and let them get away with more, too. I don't think it's allergies. I'm not usually allergic. I don't know what it is. Made in China Model 3 exported to Europe. Yes, currently they're started exporting made in China Model 3s to Europe. But I think that in the long run, obviously, they're going to be making Model 3 in Berlin and Model Y in Berlin, and that will supply Europe. It's just in the short term, that's what they're doing. A couple ways to make concrete with low carbon output called green carbon. They've recently discovered a way to increase efficiency of solar cells to over 60%. Coal is dead. That would be interesting. I don't know who Neil Bortz is. I recognize the name, but I know he is. Oh, I'm ANCAP too, Thaddeus. My joke about being a libertarian is I used to call myself a libertarian, but then I realized I don't believe in that much government. So that's a libertarian joke. I don't expect everyone else to get it. But if you're interested at all, there's a guy named Murray Rothbard who wrote a book called Anatomy of the State. Really short, free on the internet. Just Google Anatomy of the State. Great reading. But you won't like it if you believe big government. So here in Europe, Tesla's very cool, but for rich people. Yeah, well, when Berlin gets going, the cost, we've seen this. when Berlin gets going, the cost of Teslas in Europe is going to plummet. Does one of your kids have a cat and no cat? We have a dog. We've had the dog a long time. That's not it. I just itchy. I don't know. Hope you read about the wiring. Yeah, well, I think the wiring is going to happen. I think it's just a question of when. There's no such thing as a fair tax. Let's see. All right. We've been going for an hour and a half. How many people we got on the stream? 3,700 people. Oh, 433 people right now. Okay. So first of all, thank you everybody for watching. What do Uber and Lyft do for insurance? No, okay. So I can tell you the answer to the Uber and Lyft question. So when you drive for Uber or Lyft, you have your regular car insurance. Your regular car insurance does not cover you when it covers you when you're just doing your regular driving. It does not cover you when you're taking somebody from one place to another. Anand, thank you for your contribution. Anybody, any contributions appreciated. So your regular car insurance does not apply when you're operating for Uber and Lyft. The tricky spot is when you're waiting for a ride. And Uber and Lyft provide $1 million of insurance to you while you're driving a ride for them. And I think when you're on your way to pick up the ride, but when you're sitting in a parking lot where you're driving down the road towards the spot where you're going to pick up a ride, where you're going to start looking for rides, your regular insurance doesn't cover you and Uber and Lyft don't cover you. And so there's this gray area. So some car insurance companies will sell you an additional insurance for that. And none of this is going to matter if you have self-driving, your car is running self-driving. Tesla's going to be on the hook for any accident. Tasha Keeney from ARC said today, I was going to watch that, said autonomous driving could disrupt $8 trillion of economic activity in public markets. I don't know how she's measuring that, but it's very clearly disruptive. I have a video. If you look back in my videos on my channel, I have a video where I talk about 10 industries that Tesla and the other businesses are going to disrupt. And, I'm a personal injury lawyer. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. There's going to be no more DUI cases. There's going to be no more car accident cases. All these TV, if you're American, you see all these TV ads for these lawyers. It's going to be gone. So a Tesla formula, improve affordable vehicles, reduce costs, improve the value of vehicles, make them better at the same time, and then iterate. You left out iterate to see the C. They got to iterate, and then it gets better and better and better. Where do I see Tesla stock price by the end of the year? Okay, this is an important thing. Number one, this is not financial advice. Number two, I don't make short-term stock price predictions. I do not think it's possible to make accurate short-term stock price predictions. I'm much more interested in the long run. I bought my stock, most of my Tesla stock I bought a couple years ago. I'm not planning on selling it for 10 years. I don't care what the share price is at the end of the year. If it's low enough, I'll buy more if I can find the cash. But I really don't care. I don't worry about the short-term share price. I can ballpark what I think it's going to be in 2022 or 2023. And I have a video where I talk about 2022. So you can check my video out. It's one of my recent videos. And I'm going to do a video coming up where I'm going to project out 2022 and into the future. But I do not make calls on, what it's going to be next week, next month, even, even next year. With China factory exporting vehicles, I would anticipate a future Tesla factory in a country within the Trans-Pacific Partnership for free. Well, we know there's definitely an indication that Tesla's going to build some kind of factory in Indonesia. Whether it will be just batteries or whether they're actually going to produce cars in Indonesia is not clear. It is the 4th largest population in the world. It is the 16th largest economy in the world. And they don't have a domestic car industry, as in a car industry that is run by domestic companies. They're all foreign companies in there. So there's huge potential for Tesla to build cars in Indonesia and sell them to Malaysia and Australia and Thailand. If they're going to be building a battery factory in Indonesia, it might make sense for them to build a car factory there too. And yes, Brent McKinney, unintentional injuries, car accidents are the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States. Self-driving cars are going to be huge for so many reasons. It's going to make our lives so much better. Boat in which Tesla need vertical more than cars need it bad because the maintenance is insane. All systems are different. Yeah, I suppose there's a really interesting... Okay, Pete, you know more about Indonesia than I do, so I can't answer that. But I think there's tremendous potential for boating, but I don't know enough about the boating industry to answer that. So, all right, we've gone for more than an hour and a half now. I want to thank everyone for watching. I'm going to go figure out why my nose is itching. Will Semi and Cybertruck be made in Austin? Which will be first to roll off the assembly line? Cybertruck will be made in Austin. We don't know about Semi yet. And Model Y will be first, and I think Cybertruck may beat Semi to production, but it's not clear. So stock split, I don't really. Yeah, I mean, stock split is great if you're it helps if you're buying at the small scale. If you're buying at large scale, it doesn't matter as much. So hoping Tesla sell cheaper in New Zealand. Currently, you're looking at $180,000, which was, well, if they make them closer to New Zealand, it'll be easier to sell them cheaper. I don't understand the dynamics of the New Zealand market. Yeah, mechanics are going to be in trouble. Like I still have an ICE vehicle, Volkswagen Passat, and I just got an oil change. I'm like, this guy's going to be out of business in 10 years, and he's young. So let's see. Boat has bust out another 1,000. I like that. All right. Well, anyway, thank you, everybody. I'm going to stay on the chat for 5 more minutes. The chat, I think YouTube keeps the chat alive for 5 more minutes. So I'm going to stay on the chat, but I'm going to wrap up the video now and just thank everyone for watching. Please support me on Patreon. It's in the description below, and check out the merch. Thank you, Bradford Ferguson, Halter Ferguson Financial. Thank you, my Patreon supporters. Thank you to Joseph Ramos, who's one of my channel sponsor. Check out his information below if you need IT support. Thanks, everyone, very much.